Bonjour, today folks, let's have a look at the possessive pronouns. The one we are looking at today are the masculine plural form. So we're going to learn how to say mine, yours, hers, and so on. Okay folks, if you are watching this video, that means you have watched the other two already, which is the French possessive pronouns, the masculine form, and then the feminine form. Today we are talking about the masculine plural form. Now have a look at the chart here. As you see, we have 4 ways of saying mine, 4 ways of saying yours, 4 ways of saying hers, and so on. So you need to know a few rules before you start understanding the possessive pronouns. They are very hard to grasp, especially for you in English. You have one way of saying mine, one way of saying yours, one way. We have 4 ways in French, and that is what I would like to teach you today, how to differentiate and when to use what. So, what are possessive pronouns? Well, possessive pronouns replace a noun defined by an adjective, a possessive adjective. So you're going to tell me, what is a possessive adjective? Well, when you say your, or my, or her, or his, that is a possessive adjective. Now, you can transform this possessive adjective into possessive pronouns. So when you say your, it will become yours. When you say my, it will become mine. If you say her, it will become hers. Get me? And that's what possessive pronouns are. So if I say your pencils, well, we say vos crayons. Then if you want to use the possessive pronoun of vos crayons, it becomes les vôtres. So have a look at the chart and what are our masculine plural possessive pronouns? Well, they are as follow. Les miens. Can you say that? Les miens. Les tiens. Now, les miens mean mine. Les tiens being yours. Les siens. Very good. That means hers or his or its. Les siens. Les nôtres, and that's ours. Les nôtres. Les vôtres, and that's yours, the polite version if you want to talk to more than one person or referring to more than one thing. Et les leurs, and that's theirs. Okay, regarding whether we're talking about a group of girl or a group of boy, it's always les leurs. Okay, so it is very important to use the correct definite article before your pronoun. Here we are looking at les, okay? So we are looking at a word which is a plural, but not only that, it's a masculine as well. Because if you wanted to use a word referring to a plural and feminine, then we don't say les miens, we say les miennes. But that is another story completely. I think that the best way for me to try to explain how to use these pronouns, it's for me to give you a few examples. So, let's have a look at this one. Ce ne sont pas tes livres, ce sont les miens. Now, as you can see here, we've got 2 kinds of possessive. Okay, so we've got a possessive adjective, which is in the first line here, tes livres, which is your books. And here we've got les miens, which is here the possessive pronoun, okay, which is mine. So, ce ne sont pas tes livres, these are not your books, ce sont les miens, these are mine. So in the same sentence, we are using the possessive adjective and the possessive pronoun. I've used this example so you can see the difference between the two, okay? So why are we using les? That's because we are talking about more than one book. Why are you using mien and not mienne, okay? That is because livre is a masculine word, okay? So, have a look at the other example. Ils ont vu tes chats dans le jardin. As-tu vu les leurs? Ils ont vu tes chats dans leur jardin. As-tu vu les leurs? Now have a look at that. Ils ont vu. That means they saw. If you're not certain about this one, please refer back to my videos on how to conjugate a verb in a passé composé. Now, they saw your cats. Now, tes chats, your cats, okay? Tes chats. In their garden. So here, within the beginning of that sentence, we have already two possessive adjectives, okay? We have your and we have their, okay? They are not possessive pronouns. Be very careful with that. So, they saw your cats in their garden. Ils ont vu tes chats dans leur jardin. And then we have, as-tu vu les leurs? Have you seen theirs? Les leurs is theirs, okay? Les leurs, okay? Here we know that it has to begin with les because we are talking about more than one cat, okay? And the good thing here, it is always, whether it's feminine or masculine, leur always is the same. So it's les leurs for the masculine plural and les leurs for the feminine plural form, okay, of the possessive pronoun. So, ils ont vu tes chats dans leur jardin. As-tu vu les leurs? They saw your cats in their gardens. Have you seen theirs? Excellent. Now, let's have a look at this one. Tu mets tes habits dans l'armoire. Nous mettons les nôtres sur le lit. Tu mets tes habits dans l'armoire. Nous mettons les nôtres sur leur lit. So, you put your clothes in the wardrobe, okay? Your clothes, tes habits. Nous mettons, we put, les nôtres. So what do you think les nôtres means? It means ours, okay? Les nôtres, okay? Again, it's the same for the feminine plural, les nôtres, okay? So we put ours where? Sur le lit, on the bed. Well done, you, okay? Let's repeat this sentence together. Tu mets tes habits dans l'armoire. Nous mettons les nôtres sur le lit. Well done, you. Do you know what? I mean, as I'm reading the examples, I realize how hard it is to grasp the possessive pronouns in French. We have 4 ways, for goodness sake. You know, that is tough to grasp. But I don't expect you to know them by heart. You know, I want you to be aware of them. Just at least be aware of them. And be aware when you come up with in a conversation in France, or whatever you are in a conversation with a French person. If you hear les miens, les miennes, les tiennes, or whatever, you would think, oh, I know what that means, okay? You might not necessarily be able to say it, but at least you're aware of them, okay? Okay, and to finish, I would like to do something different. This time I'm going to show you the sentence in English, and I would like you to try to translate it in French. Now, this is my sentence. Our children are very agitated. Yours are quieter. Now, have a look at it. Our children are very agitated. Yours are quieter. Now, if you wanted to translate our, we know how to do that because you have watched my possessive adjective lessons, haven't you? Oh, yes, you have. So we know that our is nos, N-O-S. It's a plural because enfant is a plural. So, nos enfants sont très agités. Nos enfants sont très agités, okay? Yours. Now, if you wanted to say yours, again, this is what we are learning at the moment. The pronoun, okay, the possessive pronoun, the masculine version here, it's either les tiens or les vôtres, okay? In this case, it can be both because we don't know who we are talking to. Could it be one person, two person, a person we know very well, a person we don't know very well? We don't. So, I'm going to say les vôtres sont, yours are, plus calmes, quieter, plus calme, okay? So I know this exercise is really hard to do, but why don't you do it yourself? Why don't you write an English sentence and try to translate it in French, okay? And leave it on a comment and I will endeavor to correct it if I can. Oh yes, I will. Bonjour, today let's have a look at possessive pronouns in the feminine plural form. So we are going to learn how to say mine, yours, and so on. Okay, folks, now if you are not confident with possessive pronouns, please have a look at my lessons on possessive pronouns, the masculine form, the feminine form, the masculine plural, because today I'm covering the last part of the possessive pronouns, which is called the feminine plural form. As I said to you before, we have 4 ways of saying mine, 4 ways of saying yours and his, hers, and so on. Today we are concentrating on the feminine plural form of the possessive pronoun, okay? So you're going to tell me, well, what does it mean? Well, it's basically when you want to say mine and you're referring to something which is plural and feminine. Okay, so what do they look like in their plural feminine form? If you wanted to say mine, you would say les miennes. Les tiennes would be for yours. Les siennes would be for his, hers, or its. Les nôtres would be for ours. Les vôtres for yours, and les leurs for theirs. The good thing with the last 3, les nôtres, les vôtres, les leurs, it's exactly the same as the masculine plural form of the possessive pronoun. So you can learn one and you will learn automatically the other. Okay. You've got to remember the main rule about possessive pronouns. In French, the possessive pronouns vary according to the gender and the number of the noun it replaces, okay? As well as the person to whom the object belongs to. So, in the example, mes robes, which is my dresses, if we wanted to say mine, we would say les miennes. Why? Because these are mine, and because robe is feminine, and because it's plural, so les miennes. So you've got to think of 3 things every time you use a possessive pronoun. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, I may as well not use the possessive pronouns and try to avoid it. Yeah, that is an option. But why don't you be aware, okay? Why aren't you aware of the possessive pronouns so you know that when it comes up in a conversation, you know what it means, or you know vaguely what it means, okay? Now, the rule number 2, it is very important to use the correct definite article, le, la, or les, in front of this possessive pronoun, okay? Or according to the gender or the number you're using. So les will refer to a plural. And since this is what we are doing today, we are going to have a few examples covering les. So for example, if you wanted to say mes fleurs, my flowers, but you wanted to say mine, you would say les, because fleur is plural, and mienne, es at the end, because fleur is also feminine. So how would you say tes plantes? Okay, that means your plants. How would you put that into its possessive pronoun form? That's right. You would say les because it's a plural, and tiennes because it's yours and it's feminine. So bear in mind here, you're taking 3 things in consideration here. Okay, the fact it's plural, the fact they are yours, and the fact they are feminine. Okay. I know what you're thinking. So another example, ses oreilles, which is his ears, but it also means her ears. Now, refer back to my lessons on adjective pronouns if you're not sure about and understand how to say my, your, his, her. Because that's not what we are doing today. We are covering pronouns, okay, here, not adjectives, okay? We are covering possessive pronouns, not adjective pronouns, okay? Very different here. So, ses oreilles, his ears, or her ears for that matter, would become les siennes. It becomes his or hers, okay? It's the same. It matters, what matters, it's whether oreille is feminine or masculine, not whether it belongs to a boy or a girl. But that, I have covered this before in another lesson, okay? So, les siennes, okay? Now, what would you replace nos maisons? How would you replace nos maisons by a possessive pronoun? Nos maisons, our houses. You would say les, because houses here is plural, and notre, because we know that notre is the possessive pronoun of the feminine plural form. Okay, now I don't want to confuse you too much here, but you've got to be aware of this, okay? I understand it's really, really, really tricky. I get it, okay? I feel for you. Now, if we were to cover a few examples, we could say voici mes clés. Où sont les tiennes? Voici mes clés. Here are my keys. Where are yours? Okay. Où sont les tiennes? Okay. Now again, why is it that we are writing les tiennes and not la tienne or not le tienne? It's because here we know that clé is a feminine plural, okay, and it's yours, okay, so we adapt yours to tien, okay, and tienne because it's feminine, and tienne with an S and les in front because it's plural, okay. Right, now you could also say voici mes clés. Où sont les vôtres? Now, les tiennes and les vôtres mean the same in English. It means yours, okay? Why is that? Because we've got two ways of saying you in French. We've got the tu and we've got the vous. So always take this in consideration as well. Oh my goodness! You've got to take the fact that you are talking either to a person you know very well or a person you don't. So the formal way is tu. The informal way is vous, or if you talk to a group of more than one person, which is vous, okay? So another example, vos chaussures sont propres, mais les leurs sont sales. Vos chaussures sont propres, mais les leurs sont sales, okay? So vos chaussures, your shoes are clean. Vos chaussures sont propres, but, mais, les leurs, theirs, are dirty, sont sales, okay? This one is slightly easier because les leurs is the same whether it's masculine, plural, or feminine, plural, okay? If you know how to say theirs, then this is what you need to do in the plural form, okay? If it was a masculine form, le leur. If it was a feminine form, la leur. It just happens here that it's a plural form. Les leurs. Okay? Now another example could be j'ai mis tes chemises dans la valise, mais j'ai oublié les miennes. J'ai mis tes chemises dans la valise, mais j'ai oublié les miennes. So I put your shirts in the suitcase, but I forgot mine. As in, I forgot to put mine. Okay? So j'ai mis, I put, it's a passé composé, it's a past tense. Again, if you're not familiar with the passé composé, have a look at my many verbs that I have conjugated in the past before about the past, okay? So, I put your shirts in the suitcase, but I forgot mine. J'ai mis tes chemises dans la valise, mais j'ai oublié les miennes, okay? And again, mienne here is feminine. Why? Because chemise, the shirt, is feminine, okay? Here it's plural because we are talking about more than one shirt, okay? Another example and the last example, il donne ses clés, il donne les siennes. Il donne ses clés, he gives his keys, but it could be her keys, he gives her keys, okay? So, il donne ses clés, il donne les siennes, he gives his or he gives hers. Les siennes, and again, clés is feminine and it's plural here, so we say les siennes, okay? Wow, That is a tough one. Can you imagine how tough it is for me to teach this one? Really, really hard. What I'd like you to do is have a look at the chart again. We finished on the possessive pronoun. Have a look at the whole chart and be familiar with these possessive pronouns, okay? Because they are very tough. And why don't you subscribe to Learn French with Alexa, the YouTube channel, because it's awesome. And leave a comment. Bonjour! Today let's have a look at the different verb groups that we have in French. Okay guys, now this lesson is a little bit more tricky than usual because I'm about to explain to you how the French conjugation works, okay? In order to do that, I've got to explain to you that in French we have 3 different verb groups, okay? Now, to start with, we've just to remember what a verb is, okay? A verb indicates an action, for example, to walk, marcher, or to eat, manger, or describe a state, a characteristic, etc., as in être, to be, sembler, to appear, okay? So we are very confident that we know what a verb is, aren't we? Right. Now, once you know what a verb is, I would like you to have a look at different verbs. And I would like you to tell me in English, not in French, whether these verbs are regular verbs or irregular verbs, okay? Do you think you can do that for me? Okay, let's have a look at this verb, walk, okay? Now let's have a look at this verb, sleep. Now let's have a look at dance. Now let's have a look at eat. So, to walk, to sleep, to dance, to eat. Here's my question. Which one of these verbs, okay, what are the verbs, because there are 2, that are regular verbs? Yeah, well, I can see 2. I can see walk, right? And I can see dance. So you're going to tell me, but why? Why is one verb regular and the other is not? Well, in English, and we are talking in English at the moment, not in French. In English, a regular verb is always conjugated the same way and follow the same pattern. For walk, when you want to put this into the past tense, you add ed. So it becomes a past tense. So I walk, I walked, ed. I dance, I danced, ed. Okay. I watch, I watched, ed. So by putting ed, suddenly the verb has become a past tense verb. Okay. You following me? Excellent. Now let's have a look at the other 2 verbs. So I have I sleep, or to sleep, and to eat. When I put them into their past tense, I can't add ed. I can't say I slept, and I can't say I eated. Okay? That's because they are irregular verbs. Okay? So what do? We learn them by heart, and we know, well, as a French person, I learn them by heart. As an English speaker, it comes naturally to you. So, to sleep become I slept, okay, PT. To eat becomes I ate, okay. To fight becomes I fought. To drink becomes I drank, okay. Do you see what happened? That in English you've got regular verbs and irregular verbs. Well, guess what? Exactly the same in French. We have 3 groups of verbs, okay? 2 of which are regular verbs, and the last one are highly irregular verbs, which I would invite you to learn by heart. So today's lesson is about understanding the 3 group verbs only, okay? Now, you might ask me, okay, or you might not, So why is it so important for me to know which group they belong to, those verbs? Well, it is very important, especially when you are going to conjugate them, where you are going to take them from this infinitive form, as in to watch, and conjugate them into their past tense. I watched. Knowing which group they belong to means that you will be able to put the correct stem to the word and the correct ending to the word. And they follow always the same pattern for all the ER verb, which belongs to the first group verb, or IR verb, regular verb again. They follow the same pattern. By knowing that, you will have very little mistakes made actually when conjugating this verb. Okay, so let's have a look at the first group. The first group includes regular verbs ending in ER in their infinitive form. When I mean infinitive form, it means to watch, to dance, to, and so on. Okay, so it means that this verb has not yet been altered by a subject pronoun. Okay, so it is known as a regular verb. This is by far the group which contains the most verbs. So that's quite good news. Okay, which means that you're most likely to be able to have to conjugate a ER verb rather than a third group verb. Okay, so a few examples of ER verb could be tomber, to fall, chanter, to sing, marcher, to walk, regarder, to watch, écouter, to listen. All these verbs are ER verbs and therefore regular verbs. So when we are going to conjugate them, they will all follow the same pattern. The only thing I could say is that in the ER verb, the exception to the rule is aller, to go, A-L-L-E-R. Now, aller, although it ends in ER, actually belongs to the third group verb because it is irregular. When you're going to say I go, you do not say je alle, okay, you say je vais, tu vas, and so on. But that's another lesson completely. Okay, now we've seen the ER verb, or we touched on it a little bit. Let's have a look at the IR verb. Now this belongs to the second group, okay, and they are regular verbs. So an example that comes up to my mind is the verb finir, which means to finish, okay? Finir. So again, verbs ending in IR, which belongs to the second group, always conjugates the same, always are conjugated the same way. Je finis, tu finis, il finit. But that's another lesson. Now you've got verbs such as choisir, to choose, as well belonging to the IR second group verb. Obéir, to obey, okay, again IR second group verb. So that means they will all be conjugated the same way. Finir, choisir, obéir, always conjugated the same way. What you have to understand, and this is where it becomes quite complicated, is that you have verbs ending in IR that belongs to the third group, not the second group, and therefore do not follow the same pattern as the second group, okay? So you're going to say, why, how do I know? Well, you don't really. And what you need to do is learn them by heart. But there is a little trick to it. And again, unless you're French, you might not know. You've got to follow your gut instinct here. What happens is that all the verbs in this second group in the present participle form have or end in isant, I-S-S-A-N-T. So again, I can hear you saying, but what is a present participle? A present participle ends in English in ing. So for example, you could say, by finishing my homework tonight, I will be happy. For example, so by finishing. So when you say by finishing, ing, we call that a present participle, okay? In French, in IR verb, they all end with isant. I-S-S-A-N-T. So, finir, finissant. Choisir, choisissant. obéir, obéissant. Okay, they all end in issant, so therefore we know they belong to the IR second group regular verb. Okay, group. Okay, now you can have a look and you say, but what are the IR verb in the third group? Well, we have a lot of them, unfortunately, who do not follow the same, which do not follow the same pattern as the second group. For example, venir, to come, when it is put into this present participle, is not venissant. Okay, it doesn't exist, it's venant. Dormir, to sleep, is not dormissant but dormant. So these verbs belong to the highly irregular third group verb. And this is what I want to cover now. The irregular verb all end in RE or OIR. Okay, now let's have a look at it. It can end in IR too, by the way. So we've got verb ending in IR, such as sortir, dormir. Verb endings in OIR, such as savoir, vouloir, pouvoir. And verbs ending in RE, such as prendre, attendre, mettre, croire. Now what you've got to understand here is the third group verb, and the reason why we put them all into the same category here is that they are conjugated in a different fashion, okay? Though the endings of the imperfects the same, the endings of the future, the conditional will be the same, the stem of it will be different. What I mean by stem, for example, you have voir, okay, to see. When you use this verb in the future tense, then you have to change the verb. It becomes verrait, verrait, okay, and not voirait. Boire as well, to drink, would become bu into its past participle. So they change drastically, okay? That's what you've got to understand. So you're going to ask me, maybe, I don't know, is there a pattern for the third group verb? Well, no is the answer to that, okay? There are some patterns, but most of the time there isn't. And that's where you have to set yourself a list of the irregular verb and look at what they look like in the past participle form. Prendre, which means to take. Pris is the past participle. When I mean past participle, I mean taken. Yeah, I have taken. J'ai pris, okay? And we are talking about the verb prendre, to take here, okay? Vouloir becomes voulu, okay? Pouvoir, to be able to, becomes pu, okay? So that's another lesson completely. This lesson was purely to show you that we have 3 verb groups in French and that you have to be aware of them, okay? What you could do is have a look at a list of French verbs and try to put them in the right category. Is it an IER verb? Is it an IR verb? Or is it all the rest, the third group verb, okay? Once you understand where they belong, then the conjugation of them will become much easier. But that's the next lesson. Remember to subscribe to YouTube on my YouTube channel, Learn French with Alexa. And I shall see you super soon. Leave a comment. Bonjour! Today I am going to teach you how to conjugate a first group verb in a present tense. So basically, how do you conjugate a regular verb in the present tense? Okay, folks, if you have followed my course, you will understand that in French we have 3 different verb groups or group verbs, okay? The ER verbs and the IR verbs are known as regular verbs, and the rest, as in the OIR, RE verbs, are known as the irregular verbs. Now, today I'm going to teach you how we conjugate the verb in the present tense using a regular verb. What I mean by regular verb, I mean the verbs ending in their infinitive verbs by ER. So you're going to say, but what is an infinitive verb? Well, it is the verb that you have not yet conjugated, okay? For example, in English, it will be to eat, to walk, to, and so on. In French, it is not to something. We don't have that in front of the verb. Instead, we've got an endings. It's either ER, IR, or RE, and all other endings, okay? So the ER verb, except for the verb aller, are regular verbs. Now, knowing that they are regular verbs is going to be really useful. Why? Because they're all conjugated the same way. Now, as there is one slight exception that I'm going to cover as well in this lesson, is all the verbs ending with C, C-E-R, okay, and G, G-E-R, okay, J-E-R, okay, G. They are conjugated slightly differently, but in effect the ending is doesn't change. It's always the same. Now, how do we conjugate a verb from the first group into the present tense? This is what you have to do. You take the verb, the infinitive verb. For example, we're going to use chanter as an example here. Now, chanter means to sing. As you can see, it has an ER ending. So that tells me it's a regular verb. Once you know that, you need to drop the ER, bling, and so you end up with a stem chante, C-H-A-N-T. And then, always, you need to follow these special endings. For je, it is I. For tu, it is IS. For il, elle, on, it is I. For nous, it is ONS. For vous, it is IZ. And for il and elle, it is ENT. So the endings I've just given you are the endings of the present tense for the regular verbs. But you're going to tell me, what is the present tense here? Well, basically, we're going to learn how to say, I sing, present. This is what I'm doing at the moment. You sing, he sings, okay? Now, remember that we don't have such a thing in French as I am singing. We don't have an ing form at all. So it always goes back to the simplest form, I sing. Okay, when you realize that, it makes things so much simpler. Don't try to translate I am and then singing. Doesn't exist in French, okay? So just do I sing. So the way we do that, we take the stem chante and we add the special ending. I, je chante. Can you see that? And that is I sing. Simply. Tu chantes. I-S. Though there is an S, we do not pronounce the S at the end. So you say tu chantes. Now for il and elle and on, it's chante. Again, the same as je with an I. Now the where the differs slightly, it's nous. Nous always have ONS at the end. So nous chantons. Okay, we've added the ONS to the stem chante. Vous chantez. IZ. And il or elle, which means they, by the way, chante, okay, E-N-T. Now, though there is E-N-T, you do not pronounce the N and the T. You pronounce it as E, just like je, tu, il, elle, okay? So, je chante, tu chantes, il chante, elle chante, on chante, nous chantons, vous chantez, il chante, elle chante. Okay, if you follow this, you will be able to conjugate in the present tense pretty much any verbs, regular verbs. Okay, why don't you do it yourself? Have a look at this verb, regarder. What do you think that means? Regarder means to watch. Okay, how would you say we watch? Now remember, you want to say we are watching. It's the same as saying we watch in French. So we watch. What you need to know is how do we say we and what is the ending in the present tense of we. okay, of the subject pronoun we. So we know that it is ONS. So, as I said to you, drop the ER of regarder and add ONS with we. So, nous regardons, and that means we are watching or we watch. Get it? Yeah? Now you need to practice. Have a list of French verbs, regular French verb ending with ER, and try to conjugate them and put them into a sentence as well. That helps a lot. Now, what I want to do now is show you the verb manger, because it's one of these exceptions. It has G-E-R or G-E-R at the end, okay? Now, what happens is that you follow the same patterns as I've just told you, except that when we come to nous, we need to change it slightly. So, je mange, we've added an I, tu manges, elle mange, on mange, and then suddenly for nous, we have to keep an I and then add ONS. You must not get rid of the I, because if you do that, it's nous mangeons. Okay, nous mangeons. So that's one of the exceptions from the regular verbs. Okay, so we say nous mangeons. Excellent. And then vous mangez. Okay, it has I anyway, so we say je. And il and elle mange. Okay, so the exception here is for nous, because we cannot say nous mangeons. And in order to make the sound je, we add an I. Nous mangeons. So that's one of the exceptions. Now, another exception is the verb commencer. So any verb ending with C-E-R, such as commencer, which means to begin, okay, changes slightly. In that case, to preserve the soft C sound that we hear in je commence, tu commences, il commence, and so on, we need to convert the C into a cedilla in front of a E or an A. So, therefore, okay, for nous, you are going to put a cedilla. Nous commençons, okay, and suddenly the C has to have a cedilla. So, a bit like the manger sound where we keep an E to keep the je soft, okay, we are doing exactly the same for the C. Okay, commencer. Now, you've got to be aware of these slight exceptions, okay, but don't panic too much. Now, that's it for me on the first group verb of the present tense. It's dead easy. All you need to do is drop the ER, use the stem, and add those endings. Bonjour! Today let's learn how to conjugate a regular verb in French in the passé composé, so the past tense. Okay, the objective of this lesson today is to learn how to conjugate a regular verb in the passé composé. Now, the passé composé is known as the past tense in English. So, you need to remember one thing. What is a regular verb in French? Well, these are all the verb ending in their infinitive form in the ER form. So you would say marcher with an ER, that means to walk. Manger, to eat, and so on. So wherever in English you say to something and the verb has not yet been conjugated, we call that an infinitive verb. Today, let's concentrate on the ER verb, which are the regular verbs. So, that means they are easy to conjugate, okay? They will follow all the same pattern, and I'm about to teach you how to conjugate these verbs into the past tense. Now, remember one thing though, aller, ER, is not a verb that belongs to the first group verb. Unfortunately for all of us, aller is a highly irregular verb. So you would not conjugate it the way I'm going to teach you now. This is another lesson completely. Okay, now you're going to tell me, but what is a passé composé and when do we use a passé composé? The passé composé is an action that took place in the past and is done, gone over with. So you would say in English, I ate a banana this morning. So the fact that you are saying I ate means that it's a past tense and it's a past action, okay? It happened this morning, it did not carry on for a period of time, unlike the imperfect tense. But that's another lesson completely, so be very careful with that. How do you form a passé composé? Now, the way you do it, you have a subject pronoun, which is the je, the tu, the il, and elle. If you're not familiar with subject pronouns, please refer back to one of my lessons on subject pronoun. Once you have that, you must decide what auxiliary verb, as in to be or to have, you're going to use with that verb, because it depends, okay? So, some verbs, regular verbs, are used with the avoir, okay, and some verbs are used with être. So avoir is to have, an auxiliary, and être is to be, okay. Now, basically, you have the subject pronoun, you have the auxiliary verb in the present tense, and then you've got what we call the past participle, okay. That's the third part of the passé composé. So, the past participle of the first group verbs ends in I with an accent, okay, in its basic form. So if you take a verb such as marcher, what you need to do to have the past participle, you drop the R and you add an accent. And here you have the past participle. So you're going to say, but what is a past participle? In English, it's quite simple. It is when you say I have, and then you use that past participle, walked. Okay, so you added ed. I have eaten. Okay, so you didn't say I have ate or I have eat. You say I have eaten. So you need to know this past participles. Okay, regular verbs, dead easy. Drop the R and add an accent, and there you have your past participle. Okay. Now, it is important to remember that the ending of the past participle will depend on the auxiliary verb you used to form the passé composé. So, with the auxiliary verb avoir, the ending is the same regardless of the gender or number that of the subjects. Okay, so it will always be E with an accent. So when you say I have walked, it would be j'ai marché. So still remain E with an accent. Or if you wanted to say we have walked, marché with the E and an accent. So regardless. But when you use an auxiliary verb to be, and some verbs are used with the auxiliary verb to be in the past. When you use this verb, then you need to consider the subject. Is it A, feminine? Is it B, a feminine plural or a plural? This will depend on the ending, okay? You put either E or ES or S, okay? That is another story completely, but I just want you to be aware. We're going to have a look at two examples here, okay? The example of the auxiliary, using the auxiliary to have in the passé composé, and maybe one example using the auxiliary to be, okay? Now, the to be verb, and you will see in a minute, can be movement verbs, okay? If you're not familiar with with movement verbs, have a look at my lessons on movement verbs, okay? And the other category where you use a passé composé with the auxiliary verb to be is reflexive verb, okay? Like to wash yourself, to look at yourself. These are reflexive, back to you, okay? I think the best way is to have a look at an example, okay? The first example I want to use is this verb, chanter. Now, chanter is an ER verb, so that means it's a regular verb. Easy to conjugate, okay? Funnily enough, chanter is an irregular verb in English. So, if you wanted to say that in the past in English, you would say, I sang and I have sung. Okay, so be very careful with that. What we are trying to say today is, I have sung, okay? And sung being the past participle because you're using the auxiliary verb to have. Okay, in order to do that, I want you to know your auxiliary verb to have in the present tense. And it is like that. J'ai, tu as, il a, elle a, on a, nous avons, vous avez, ils ont, elles ont. Unless you know how to conjugate this verb in the present tense, you will not be able to form the passé composé, okay? Because this is the yeast of the bread. You must have it in order for me as a French person to know that you're talking in the past tense, an action that took place and is gone, done, over with. So, here we go. How do you say I have sung or I sang? By the way, it's exactly the same in French, okay? You always use these three parts. I have sung. So you put j'ai, I have, and then chanter, the past participle. And we know that chanter, you drop the R and you add an accent. Always the same in the regular verbs. Tu as chanté. Il a chanté. Elle a chanté. Nous avons chanté. And on a chanté is the same as il a and elle a. Now, on a is one has sung. Nous avons chanté is we have sang. Vous avez chanté, you have sang. Ils ont chanté and elles ont chanté. Okay, so we've done an example of how to conjugate a regular verb with avoir in a passé composé. Now you can take any examples, for example, marcher if you wanted to do that, and try to say I have walked. How would you say that? You know, yesterday I have walked, or we have walked in the woods this morning. Okay, try to use a regular verb and put it into its past form. Okay, using avoir if it takes avoir. Now you're going to tell me, but how do I know whether it takes avoir or être? Well, it's quite simple. Most of them take avoir in the passé composé. The rest that take être are either A, movement verbs, and B, reflexive verbs. Okay, refer back to my lesson on movement verbs. Okay. Now, let's use the verb using the auxiliary verb to be in the passé composé. I'm going to use a movement verb called entrer, to go in, entrer, okay? And I'm going to show you that it's not as easy as that when it comes to their past participle. Same thing, entrer, which is a regular verb, you drop the R and you add an accent. However, and depending on the subject pronoun you use, you have to add either an E or an ES, okay? Let's have a look at this. Je suis entré. Now remember, this verb, because it is a movement verb, is using the auxiliary verb to be, which is je suis, tu es, il est, elle est, on est, nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles sont, okay? So, je suis entré. I have entered. Or I entered. So I know that it's very confusing because in your language, English, if it's your language, you're saying I have entered. Okay, and you're not saying I am entered. You could, but that's completely different. Okay, the action is different here. We want to say I entered yesterday or I just entered. Okay, so we're using the passé composé. Now have a look. You can either put an E accent or an E if you are a lady. Okay, so you add an E for feminine, you add an S for plural or an ES for feminine plural. So, tu es entré. You entered or you have entered. Il est entré. Elle est entrée. On est entré. Nous sommes entrés. Vous êtes entrés. Ils sont entrés. Elles sont entrées. And have a look at the last two. Il, because it's plural but plural but masculine, so just add an S. And elle, because it's plural and feminine, you add an E and an S, okay? Because we are using the verb to be, okay? Now, this is very tricky. This lesson is very tricky. You're going to tell me, when will I know how to use the auxiliary to be or to have? How will? Blah, blah. Okay, remember one thing, is that most of the time it uses to have in the passé composé. Okay, the rest of them will be movement verb, there are only 17 of them, or reflexive, as in I'm washing myself, I'm looking at myself, I'm getting myself up. Okay? Right, that's it for the passé composé in ER verb. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. That's it for me. Au revoir, à bientôt. Bisous, bisous. Bonjour, today let's have a look at how to conjugate a first group French verb in the future tense. Okay, let's have a look at how to conjugate a first group verb in ER. This is the regular French verb in the future tense. Now, we've learned about the ER verb. We know that they are regular, and because they are so regular, we conjugate them in the future tense exactly the same way. You will hear, regardless whether it's a first, second, or third group, always the same ending in the future tense, and it sounds in re. So for je, it will be re. For tu, it's ra. For il, elle, on, it's ra. For nous, it's ron. For vous, it's re. And for il and elle, it's ron. So when you hear that in a sentence and you know that it's the verb, it is very likely that the French person will refer, the French-speaking person will refer to the future tense. In English, it's quite simple. You put the modal will. So I will eat tonight in the restaurant. We know it's a future because you're giving me a clue. Will. Okay, you will eat. In French, it's all about special endings, and I've just given them to you. I think the best way of doing it is by giving you an example of a verb. For example, let's take manger. Now, manger is to eat, okay? And here we have it in its infinitive form. It has not been conjugated yet. So it is ER, it's regular, so that's easy for me. All I need to add is the special ending depending on the subject pronoun you're using. So, if we wanted to say I will eat, you would say je mangerai. See that? I literally did not change the verb manger. All I added is the a ending, ai. Tu mangeras. You will eat. Il mangera. He will eat. Elle mangera. Sorry about that. She will eat. Okay. On mangera. One will eat or we will eat, because on also means we. Nous mangerons. Okay. So we will eat. Vous mangerez. That's you will eat, and ils mangeront or elles mangeront. Well done, okay? So basically you learn the ending re, ra, ra, ron, re, ron, and then it's easy. Take any verbs and you can conjugate in the future tense. Why don't you practice using regular French verbs such as parler, for example, to talk, okay? We know it's a regular verb because it ends in ER in its infinitive form. So if you wanted to say we will talk, you would say nous parlerons, and so on, okay? Okay, let me give you a couple of examples here. Hélène et Tony mangeront au restaurant demain soir. Now, Hélène et Tony, we know for a fact that Hélène and Tony combined make they. Okay, so they will eat. Now you need to have a look at they, and what is the special ending for they? Well, it is ron. We know that manger is the verb, so we say mangeront. Hélène et Tony mangeront au restaurant demain soir. They will eat at the restaurant tomorrow evening. Okay, you can give it a timeline. It's going to happen. Okay, it's a future tense. Charlotte demandera la permission de sortir du travail plus tôt. Charlotte demandera la permission de sortir du travail plus tôt. Now here we know it's a future tense because we have the ra sound. Why is it ra and not ron and not re? That's because we are using Charlotte as a subject. Charlotte is she, elle. And for elle, we know that the ending is ra. So elle demandera. Well done. Okay. Again, demander is a very simple, regular first group verb. Okay? So, Charlotte demandera, Charlotte will ask, demander, to ask, la permission, permission, de sortir, to leave, du travail, work, plutôt, earlier. Okay? Why don't you try to make your own sentences using the future tense, using first group verbs only? One thing, and one slight exception here you've got to look out for, is the verb ending in ier, such as crier, to shout. When you put these verbs into the future tense, when you want to say I will shout, you don't say je crierai, but you say je crierai. Basically, you keep the same spelling, not a problem. You add your special ending, but instead of crier, as in the sound you sound, you don't hear it anymore in the future tense. So it becomes je crierai, okay? You've got this for the verbs ending in EER, such as créer, to create, or ouer, jouer, to play, or huer, such as distribuer, to distribute, okay? So don't forget the E, even if it's not pronounced. That's my exception. That's it for me. Remember to subscribe to Learn French with Alexa, my YouTube channel. And why don't you leave a comment? I always try to answer the comments.